Welcome back to another episode of the Life You Love podcast. I couldn't be more excited for this week's episode because we're bringing on one of my very best friends, Maggie, to chat all things confidence. I've known Maggie since high school and I've gotten to see her confidence transformation over all these years. And after graduating college, she decided she wanted to empower other women to have the same transformation, so she became a confidence coach. She now helps women like all of us become more confident people who ultimately live happier lives because of it. She's helped me a lot with my own confidence just through our conversations as friends, so I can't wait to bring her on today and give you all a little bit of what Maggie can offer.
Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love. Welcome to the Life You Love podcast, Maggie. Obviously, we're really excited to have you here. We did give a little bit of an intro into who you are, but can you introduce yourself and give us some background on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, I am so excited to be here. And like Grace just said, my name is Maggie, and I'm a confidence coach, and I'm also an EFT practitioner. And what I do is I help women to become their highest, most confident self. And I do this through a bunch of different ways, whether it be like mindset work, identity work, habits, belief rewiring tools like EFT Tapping. And I'll get into that a little bit later in the episode as well.
Can you explain like what confidence coaching is? Because I think some people might hear it and be like, just think it's someone who's like, you got this, you know, like someone like cheering them along. But can you explain like what confidence coaching like really is, like what's at the root of it?
Yeah, of course. So I feel like, well, a lot of the time, like I've heard Rihanna say things like fake it till you make it, and like anybody can show up in a confident way. And while I do believe that there's an aspect of that that's true, confidence coaching is really about really becoming secure within yourself so that you can show up in a way that doesn't stem from a place of insecurity. A lot of people, when they are living in a like chronic state of insecurity, or they think people are judging them or comparing themselves to others, you're moving from that place of insecurity, comparison, judgment. So when you really work at it from the root cause, rather than just focusing on, a lot of people focus on external validation and they look for others to tell them that they're good enough or confident enough, or they look for the clothes that make them feel good enough and make them feel confident. And those things also do make us feel confident, but the root is fixing the core confidence so that it's not this fake confidence that's showing up that's reliant on things outside of yourself.
How did you get into this? Because I'm sure there was kind of like a personal journey that you went through, and maybe you can talk about that, because obviously to be a confidence coach, you need to be confident yourself in what you're teaching and yourself. So yeah, can you kind of talk about like your personal journey with that?
Yes. So my journey actually started in 2020. And it was when I went through a very difficult breakup. And when that happened, I just kind of had a revelation or realization that I was like, okay, I'm actually not confident in myself. I don't love myself. I was constantly seeking from validation from not only this guy, but from everybody that I run into, comparing myself, not thinking I'm good enough, always feeling like I have to be a follower to fit in. And so throughout that journey, I was like, okay, I'm going to feel my emotions, allow whatever is going on to pass, as we do in breakups. But I was also like, I am going to work my best to heal myself completely, because I don't want to just half-ass this and then be like, oh, like I feel better, but just jumping into the next relationship or jumping into the next whatever. And so what I did was I started working on completely loving myself, not just based on what somebody else would think of me. So loving myself, I worked on my confidence, I worked on my capabilities. For a long time, I also felt, and this is kind of outside of the breakup, but I felt like I was not capable of doing anything. I thought I was dumb. I thought I wasn't, like I needed help from others in order to succeed. So it was just kind of a long, like not even long, I mean, 2 years, but I feel like after the breakup, it was like 2 to 3 years where I was just completely up leveling my life in every aspect and being able to be on my own, feel secure within myself. I started working towards goals that I never even realized that I was capable of doing. And so I feel like overall, that's kind of what got me to this place of, I am capable of doing these things. I do love myself now. I'm not going to settle for shitty people in my life, whether that be in a relationship or even friendships. And when I started healing that root part of myself, that's when I started attracting in better friendships, better relationships, a better way of how I viewed myself. And when you change all those aspects of you, you start showing up in a more confident way. So, and not only that, when I was growing up, I always was like the shy kid. I always struggled with confidence. And it's just the reason why I went into confidence coaching specifically is because they say, oh, you should help people with what you struggled with the most. And when I got certified as a life coach, I was like, what's my niche going to be? And after going through the breakup and after just realizing like where I was in my life, I was like, wow, confidence is really something that I struggled with growing up. And now it's the perfect thing that I've been able to achieve for myself that now I can teach other people. And it also doesn't mean being perfect. I also want to say that. I think people think, oh, if you're confident, that means you never mess up. You're never sad. You're never, I still judge myself sometimes. I still compare myself to others sometimes. But it's now I've learned the tools to bring myself back to earth and ground myself that I can move forward from that place of security.
I love that you were, I mean, obviously I know your story because we're like best friends, but I love that you were open and vulnerable about the fact that a breakup triggered a lot of this or made you realize like, wow, I'm maybe not as confident as I thought, or wow, like there are areas of myself that I want to improve, and like sharing that journey. Because I think that for a lot of people that happens where they're in a relationship, they get some sort of like validation from it or whatever, they're getting that support from someone else. And so then when that ends, sometimes people are like, oh, like, who am I? And they start to take a step back and realize, wow, maybe I'm really not like as confident as I thought. And I think that that's something that is so relatable. And I think a lot of people don't want to admit that, oh, I got out of a relationship and then I was like, wow, like I didn't realize like how much that really was contributing to my confidence and how much validation it gave me. And I think it is relatable. I think, this podcast is like, there are some men who listen, but it's a lot of women. It's mostly women. And I know that reason I wanted to bring you onto the podcast because I know so many women struggle with confidence and don't really know how to become more confident. I think kind of like you said, we see a lot of things online that are like just focusing on the external stuff. Like, oh, if you want to just, become confident, like get this like hot girl haircut or wear this, like do this routine or this makeup routine or that, whatever. And that's really, it can make you feel more confident. But if there are root issues, it's going to be hard to move forward. So like, why do you think it is that so many women struggle with their confidence?
Well, to your point that you just said, I just wanted to say the problem with that is that people, when they get their hair done or they get their nails done, like, yes, these are all nice things that make us feel more confident, but it's like a quick dopamine hit. And then, like you said, once all that stuff is gone, you're like, oh God, who am I? Like it all, that sense of that core confidence just needs to be there or else it just all dissipates. So I think there's a couple things that go into struggling with your confidence. And I'm just going to give three things. There's a lot of different things, but I feel like these are the three main pieces. One is going to be identity. They don't really understand who they are. Maybe they've been a follower their whole life. And so when they see other people acting a certain way, they think, oh, well, that seems to be working out for them, so I'm going to act that way. When you don't know who you are at your core, you're not going to be able to like speak from a place of confidence and come from a place of confidence. So identity is one of the huge ones. Also knowing your values plays into identity. Just knowing who you are so that you don't settle for anything that is not what you want and what you align with. And then the second is childhood conditioning. So this could be a way that your parents spoke to you or made you feel, a way society made you feel, a teacher or parent, or a negative experience that you went through growing up that that became a limiting belief for you. And so what we have to understand too is we don't want to blame our parents and think, oh, well, my parents said I wasn't good enough when I was growing up, or they made me feel terrible about a bad grade that I got, and now I blame them for my low confidence. There's an aspect of ourselves where we have to understand that, okay, well, they're still learning how to be a parent at that point too. I can't blame them for how I am right now. I can become aware of why it happened, where the root cause started, but then it's my responsibility to move forward and change that belief and reframe it. And then the third thing is, this is something we all experience, and it kind of plays into the childhood conditioning, but rejection. when we get rejected, people don't know how to handle it. Whether that be when it happened when you were younger or even today, people take it as a hit to their self-worth, and it has absolutely nothing to do with that. This quote that I really love, it's the right people will align and the wrong people will decline. So when you get rejected, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means that that is not your person. And thank God they're moving out, because now you get to bring in somebody that is your person, that does align with you and your values. So I feel like those three things are what is kind of the cause of why people have low confidence, low self-esteem. That just knowing those three things, now you know exactly how to reframe these areas in your life so that you can start showing up in a more confident way.
I definitely want to dive into all three of those areas because I think there's a lot of interesting points in all three. But starting with the identity piece, I feel like this is so relatable for so many women in their early 20s because for the longest time, like when you're in high school, I think your identity is super wrapped up in that. And then when you're in college, if that's the route that you chose, your identity is super wrapped up in that as well. And then all of a sudden you graduate and the only thing that you can really like wrap your identity around is, for most people, their full-time job. And I know I even really struggled with this when I decided to quit my full-time job and pursue entrepreneurship because that was my identity, was my full-time job. And I felt like that was being taken away from me. So how do you help people with this? And kind of like, what are your tips for navigating finding your identity in your mid-20s outside of, I guess, your job?
Yeah, so I think, and this is going to be like the simplest answer, but it's so powerful. And it's really just reflecting on who you are right now versus the person that you want to become. Because when you don't stop and take a minute to like look around at your life and see like, who am I being right now? You're never going to have that opportunity to make that change because you're following everybody else. So for a long time, for me, I was someone who, I mean, I feel like we all experienced this, but in college, I was a partier, a drinker, and I just remember I would need to go out to every party. There was no party that I couldn't go to because I felt like, well, if I'm not there, then, it just made me feel not good about myself. Almost like I was missing out on something or missing out on someone, that people wouldn't like me anymore if I didn't go. So that became a huge part of my identity. And then when I turned 21, literally turned 21, I stopped enjoying going out and drinking. And that was like very uncomfortable because everyone was still going out. We were still in college. I was having friends that were like, oh, let's go out to the club. Let's go out to the bar. And I had to say no. And at first I was still saying yes. And I was just feeling so much anxiety. And I think when you try to be someone you're not, you're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel unfulfilled. You're just not going to feel happy. And so I started having to set boundaries around who I am now, what my values are, and who I want to be. And so I started saying no, and it was really uncomfortable at first. But it was like, well, who's more important? Me and who I'm becoming, or my friends? And not about my friends, but like making them feel better than myself, because we care about our friends. We love our friends. But I had to choose myself first in order to show up as a better version of myself for them as well. So I feel like with identity, you have to just sit with yourself and be like, do I even want to be doing this? Is this something that I enjoy, or is this something that other people's likes and dislikes are guiding my values and how I want to show up in the world?
I guess, how do you help your clients, or how have you seen people kind of like identify who they want to become? Because I think we're all trying to kind of like level up to that next level version of ourselves, but sometimes that's hard to even identify the type of person you want to become. Or a lot of that I think can be shaped by what you're seeing on social media and kind of people's like idealistic lifestyle. And you're like, okay, that's the girl that I want to become. I want to be that Pinterest girl. But how do you help people actually identify who they truly want to become or what they actually value?
Yeah, this is like such a powerful technique that you can do. And it's basically, you want to just get out a piece of paper and just free write everything it is that you want to become. So ask yourself, like, who is my highest self? How does she show up? How does she dress? How does she look? What does she feel like? Like, what is her energy like? And anything you can possibly think of, write it down. Because without the clarity aspect of things, you can't show up as that person because you don't know who that person is. And a lot of times we have a very vague understanding for what we want in life and who we want to become. And that's what creates this autopilot lifestyle that we all end up living on. Or we might look on Pinterest and social media and think, "Oh, I want to be that." But we don't write what that looks like for us. We're viewing it at a lens of, well, that's what it looks like for that specific person. And that also can create a lot of comparison. And what we want to do is we want to feel inspiration from that person, not comparison from that person. So getting out your piece of paper, writing everything down, and then thinking, okay, now I know exactly who I want to become, what I need to do. I love this part. Basically, what you want to do is I've created like becoming your 2.0 self. And this is essentially your higher self. And even giving her a name. So for me, my 2.0 self is Margaret. It's honestly not even my real name, but I'm just like, Margaret, why not? And I just envision it's this very strong, confident woman who can make her own decisions, who knows what her style is, who knows the type of friends and relationships she wants in her life. And whenever I start to feel a sense of self-doubt or insecurity, or if I'm about to get up on stage or go on a podcast and I'm feeling like, oh gosh, like, I don't know, like, how am I going to do this? What am I going to talk about? I'm feeling nervous. I'm like, okay, well, what would Margaret do? Margaret's going to be standing taller. Her shoulders are rolled back. She's breathing so that she can actually get oxygen in the lungs and feel more confident. She is talking. Her voice is more powerful and like she's talking in the back of the room rather than just like talking very quietly. And these are just little things like body language, the way that she thinks. And once I kind of can tap into that and tap into her, then I can start showing up in congruence with that identity and that version of myself that I've created. And the one thing I do want to say about this too is a lot of people ask, well, what if I get caught up in I'm not Margaret? Like that's just a version of myself that I want to be and I try to be, but it feels like it's at a distance. And I say that just repetition is what creates the new neural pathways in the brain to actually start becoming that person. So the more that you show up as this version of you, the more you're just going to start to merge together as one. And then Maggie and Margaret are the exact same person. And it just becomes Maggie with that almost energy of Margaret that is now within me.
It is something, I don't know what it is called. You might know. I think it's some sort of law of like physics or something, but it literally says that if you're able to conceptualize something like in your head, like, or visualize it, it's because there is a reality or it exists somewhere in reality. So
In
you're
the quantum
visualizing,
field.
yeah, the quantum field. Here we go. I got the physics.
Yeah.
It's like it's the idea of like you're picturing your higher self or whatever and thinking, yeah, like what would she do? Which this reminds me so much of like the 1 year experiment that I've been doing, which I know like you and I have talked about, obviously, because we're friends. But it's interesting that I love the idea of like calling it a certain name because it almost becomes like your friend. And I do that sometimes with like my therapist Jen. I'll think to myself like, what would Jen do? Or like, what would Jen say? Or I'm like, you know, like I have a kind of like a big sister friend Taryn, and I'm like, what would Taryn do? Like, what advice would she give me? But thinking of it with yourself too, like what would my higher self do is like a good guiding light, because also your higher self is you. It's not like, oh, what would someone else do that I'm maybe comparing myself to? It's like, what would me down the line do? I think also too, one thing that helped me figure out like what would my higher self do and what would they be like, and I'm sure you do this with your clients too, just because like you got to figure out who your higher self is, but doing like a visualization meditation is so helpful, where like you sit down and you just think of like, okay, like I'm sitting in my dream home and like what does it feel like, and like what do I look like, and I'm going through my dream day, and like, you know, yeah, where am I going, where am I living, what am I wearing, how do I look, how do I feel, like really thinking through all of those things is a good way to do it as well. I'm curious because you talked a little bit about like comparison, and I think that becomes a big confidence suck for so many women. I know I've struggled a lot with comparison, especially being online, and I know everyone who's listening to this podcast probably found us online, and so they're on the internet as well. I think that I'm curious what your thoughts are on kind of social media and confidence, because I think a lot of people say that it can be a source of comparison. Like you just get on social media, you see everybody else on there, and you start to compare yourself. So even if you were like, you know, feeling good in your confidence, it's easy to kind of, I don't want to say like fall prey to it, but like I think we all have moments where we're like, yeah, I'm feeling good and confident in myself. And then we get on social media and we're like, oh, the thing that I just said I wanted so bad and felt so confident in achieving, somebody else has. And now I feel like, oh, I can't have it. Or, I just felt so good about the work that I'm doing, but now I see someone else doing other work and I'm, or like I was finally feeling good about my wardrobe. And then I go on and I see someone else with like the cutest outfits ever. And I'm like, dang it. Like, but at the same time, I feel like we're kind of in a world right now where we can't really avoid, I mean, we can avoid social media, but for so many of us, it's a great way to stay connected and build our businesses and things. So I'm curious what your thought is on social media and confidence and how people can navigate using social media without falling into that comparison trap.
So the biggest shift that I think I've made is instead of looking at people and thinking that, oh, that could never be me, I could never have that, I started just telling myself that if she can have it, so can I. Because it's true. We think that these things we see on social media, especially when people are traveling and they're doing these amazing things, we think they're so far out of reach. But that's such a lack mindset to have. We have to have an abundant mindset and know that success is abundant. Everything you want, there's so much abundance in the world. It doesn't matter who has what first. And you also have to think like, there's so many different ideas around and concepts around higher self. Like I didn't create the higher self concept by any means. You didn't create the challenge that you were doing. I mean, it is your own, you've put your own twist on it, but there was somebody else out there that created it first. And we all just tagged along and made it our own. And I think that's kind of how I view it now is I look at things as inspiration, or I look at things as there's an abundance of that. I look at it from an abundant mindset. And so when I see someone with my dream body and I think like, oh, I'm not there yet, because we all do it. Even confidence coaches go through that too. Like I said in the beginning, I just now have the tools to kind of reground myself and get myself out of it. But if I see someone in the gym and I'm like, wow, I wish I looked like her, I start thinking I can not even look like her, but I can have that health that I desire. Because I feel like I'm throwing quotes out, but I love this quote that's like, you spot it, you got it. What you see in other people, you have within yourself. And it's just our limiting beliefs that hold us back from actually achieving those things. So next time you're comparing yourself to others, don't look at it as a negative aspect, just kind of switch it and then think, okay, this is inspiring me to go out and get that thing. And where in myself do I feel like I hold myself back from getting that? Because even thinking of health, eating, I have gone through, I mean, you and I have talked about this, Grace, a lot with our health and with like diets and all these different things and trying to become healthy. And it's like, in order to have the health that I want, I can't be eating processed foods every single day. Like it's just a fact. And so if I'm eating processed foods every day and I'm looking at someone who I want to look like, I have to ask myself and look inward rather than looking at them and think, well, where do I need to shift my habits or my behaviors, the way that I'm showing up? Because everybody else is just a mirror of us and a mirror of a place of where we can move from or how we can shift our behaviors differently.
I love that so much. I definitely agree with you that when it comes to social media specifically, it's totally your mindset. You can look at the same two images and have two completely different mindsets around it. I know for me, especially with Instagram, my Instagram is like my vision board, I would say. Like the videos and the photos that are coming up on my feed. And then if I go to my explore feed, it looks exactly like my vision board, and the algorithm obviously like reacts to what you engage with. So that's on purpose. And I use my Instagram for inspiration. I'm always saving things like workout ideas and meal inspiration. And I'm saving the girls who like have the body that I'm working toward in the gym and all of that. But like I take it with that mindset of this is my vision board and this is what I'm working toward, not necessarily comparing myself in a negative sense of like, okay, well, these girls have it, but I don't feel good about myself. So, you know what I mean? It's just like all about your mindset. So I really love that tip. When you work with your clients and they're coming to you saying things like this, do you work with them on changing some of the habits that help them become their next level self? Or how does that work? Because habits and routines make up so much of the person that we become. I feel like we talk about habits all the time on this podcast, but so do you help them kind of like change their habits or anything?
Yes, I do. So, yeah, as you were just saying, like our habits and routines create our identity, and our identity is how we show up in the world. So, before I even get into habits and routines with my clients, what I do is I take them through accepting themselves first exactly as they are. Because if you try to jump from point A to point Z without doing the work in between and just throwing in these new habits, you're going to be working on what's the saying, like a house that has the house that's breaking, the foundation is breaking down in the house. You want to build a sturdy foundation so that the house can sit on top. If you don't accept yourself and you're shaming yourself constantly, how can you expect yourself to follow through with actually staying consistent in the gym or actually staying eating the right foods and being healthy? Before I learned that acceptance is literally the first thing you have to do, I was like, why can't I stay consistent in the gym? I would go, and I remember saying to someone, I've been consistent in the gym, and them saying back to me, no, you haven't. Like you've been good in the
Best
nicest way
friend.
possible. Yeah, honest friend. In the nicest way possible. They were like, you've been going for the past 3 years. Yeah. But I'd go for like a week straight, take 2 weeks off, 3 days, a month off. It was never consistent. So I'm wondering, why am I never seeing the results that I want? And so you can create all the habits and routines that you want, but if you're neglecting the aspects of yourself that you look down on and feel shameful of, you can't step into that new identity and just move on without accepting yourself.
Is this like another quote again? This is like a very quote filled episode, but there's a quote that I saw. I think it was like in a TikTok. That's where I find like all of my information. But the person was saying that like confidence comes from doing what you say you're gonna do and like showing up for yourself consistently. And I thought like, I don't know, like the video, the person was kind of talking about like if you say like, oh, I'm gonna have a self-care night in, and then like someone asks you on a date or asks you to hang out or whatever, and you just like compromise on that, like, you know what, no, yeah, I'll go out. Or if you're like, oh, I really need to like clean my apartment, but then you decide to just like sit and watch TV anyways and like not do it, or like it ends up is you're subconsciously kind of telling yourself that like you're not going to follow through with what you say you're going to do, and you don't stick to like your own word. And I thought that was so interesting because especially with like habits and routines and things, like there are things that we just don't follow through with, or like we say we want to do but we don't. I actually like recently for me, it's been doing like meditation or like some sort of like nervous system regulation every day, which Maggie has been on me for so long. She's like, do your nervous system regulation. I'm like, oh no, okay, I'll get to it. But my doctor actually, she said to me, we have literally have the same doctor, our doctor, which we'll be bringing on the podcast soon actually. She had said to me that like, you have to think about these things like brushing your teeth. Like she was like, you brush your teeth like morning and night every single day. Like most people do it without fail. They have their oral care routine and they know that they need to do it because if they don't, their teeth are going to rot out of their head. And she was like, the same way that you need to commit to like the practices that are going to make you more confident and treat it like brushing your teeth. Can you give yourself 5, 10, 15 minutes a day to do it, or do it for 3 minutes twice a day or something if you can't sit still for 15 minutes or whatever. And thinking about a lot of those things. And I think that especially when it comes to something like confidence, which is just, it's deep rooted, it's something that we all want to be confident, but I think we all kind of know it's a bit of a journey. We're like, oh God, this is going to be a bit of an undertaking to like, you know, to try to become more confident or whatever. But if you treat it like brushing your teeth, then it becomes just part of your lifestyle, part of your routine, part of your habits. And then over time, the same way that like I have a full mouth of teeth because I have brushed my teeth every day, you know, you're going to start to see the benefits of working on your confidence and eventually become a much more confident person.
Yeah.
Maggie, you used the term capable early on in the episode. I forget like what context you used it, but I want to kind of like circle back to that because I think we're talking about showing up, but then when we're talking about the word capable, I feel like that goes back to like showing up well and like doing the thing well. And I think in a lot of cases, people put a lot of emphasis on whether or not they're capable of doing something really well, and kind of separating that from showing up is literally 90% of the battle. I know when Grace and I wanted to start a podcast, we had a lot of kind of like limiting beliefs around starting a podcast and whether or not we would be capable of being really good podcasters. But then we heard this quote really early on, or we heard this statistic really early on that said 90 some % of podcasts don't make it past episode 20 or something. So we were like, if we make it to episode 21, we are in the top 10% of podcasts automatically. You know what I mean? And just kind of like thinking about a lot of things like that. Like if you go to the gym every single day, you're probably in the top 10% of people out there in terms of fitness, because I feel like 90% of people don't go to the gym every single day. You know what I mean? So thinking about it like that in terms of just showing up is 90% of the battle. But then how do you help your clients kind of like go the extra 10% and being like, now we're going to like be confident enough in ourselves to actually do this really well?
So I think that something I was going to say after what you said, Grace, too, and I feel like I can integrate it into what you just said too, Erin, is I feel like inner child work plays a huge part in this, because hold on, how do I want to say this? Because there's so many thoughts in my brain right now, but I just want to, but when you kind of can hold your inner child's hand and be like, we got this, we're going to show up, and we're going to give it our all. But sometimes our all is only 30%. It doesn't always have to be 100%. All you can do is the best you can do. And so I think a lot of times what people run into, and what I've had my clients even say to me, is that they have this fear that if they're not showing up 100%, if they don't feel their best doing it, it doesn't feel productive. And it's not true that it's not productive. You're still doing it because you're not going to feel 100% every single day. We're especially as women, our hormones are going up and down and our moods are changing. Like, we're never going to feel the same every single day. So kind of understanding that, also, this is kind of off topic, but at the same time, it's not. The different phases that we're in as women completely change how we feel each day. And I want to go into it just slightly because I think it's really important. But when we're in our menstrual phase, we feel horrible. We don't want to do anything. We have completely low energy. We don't want to go to the gym. You're actually not really supposed to lift super heavy when you're in your menstrual phase, because something about energetics, like when you have very low energy, that really high stressful energy is not a good mix with it. And then when it comes to your follicular phase, which is right after your menstrual phase, you start feeling like you have a lot more energy. So this is when you're starting to feel like, I feel more inspired. I feel motivated. I want to lift heavy. I have more ideas coming to me. This is when you feel like you're most creative. Then your ovulatory phase is when you feel similar to the follicular phase. You start feeling like, I still have a lot of energy. I feel really motivated. This is when you feel your best. This is when you feel your most confident. And then it goes to luteal phase right after that. And this is almost like you're starting to lose energy again, and you want to start taking care of yourself a little more. And the reason why I bring up these phases is because a lot of times when I'm in my luteal phase, I'll be like, I just have no energy to go to the gym. Like, why do I not feel like going? And then you beat yourself up about it. But once you understand this, you can start to have more compassion for yourself. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to go to the gym today. And that's okay. Maybe we can go on a walk, or maybe we can do some stretching or a lower impact workout. And so your best is going to look different every single day. And that's okay. And like I said, bringing up the inner child in the beginning, it's when you feel tired, or however you're feeling, just validate your inner child to let them know that how you're feeling in that moment is okay. And there's something about being able to validate yourself that motivates you 10 times more to actually do the things you want to do. Child work is really powerful. I'll close up on that.
I think a lot of people, I love that you mentioned the cycle or the different parts of your hormonal cycle, especially as a woman, because I think that a lot of people expect themselves, myself included, and this was such a good reminder. Like, I think a lot of us expect ourselves to feel confident 24/7. Like, I know, like, I have pretty like intense periods, so I'll get like really bloated, or like, even just all the phases, I feel deeply. Like, I very much experience all of the phases. And I know a lot of women do, but I think we kind of forget, at least I know I forget sometimes, that like I'm like, oh, like, why do I feel like just ugly today? And then I'm like, it's probably because like you're literally like 2 days off from your period. And like, again, like I said, I feel all of these aspects of my cycle, like at the emotions, all the things. So I'm like, well, no, duh. Like, or yeah, like you feel like you don't love how you look right now because you are bloated, because you're literally on your period. Like, duh. Like, and not using that as like a way to beat myself up and be like, why am I not more confident? Like, it's, you have to cut yourself a little bit of slack. But kind of like on that topic, know you and I have had lots of conversations about like really practical ways to become more confident and things you can like start doing today. And I want to like touch on some of those things. Like you are always trying to put me on to like EFT tapping. So I definitely want to talk about that.
Yes.
Because I feel like a lot of people don't know about it, but also we've talked a lot about affirmations. Are there like, can you give us like some different ways people can like practically start today working on their confidence? Yeah, like EFT tapping, affirmations, anything kind of like that.
Yeah, so I'll start off by, what do we want to start with? Let's start with affirmations, because a lot of people, and they all kind of play into the same role, but with affirmations, I've heard people say before, I'll have clients come to me and they're like, I've already tried affirmations, like it doesn't work for me. And I was like, okay, well, how are you doing them? And they explain like, oh, I just, say them every day, but I don't feel anything. And I'm like, okay, you're doing it wrong. So what you need to understand, and what people out there who are listening need to understand, is that there is a window of time, which is in the morning, right when you wake up, and right as you're going to sleep. And it's called theta brainwave state. And when you're in this state, when you're working in this window of time, your brain is more susceptible to taking in new ideas, new beliefs, new concepts, whatever. So that is the time you want to say your affirmations. Not only that, but when you are saying them, I mean, I think looking in the mirror is really powerful, but you want to feel into them. Some people look in the mirror and they're in their heads thinking, I look so ugly today. But they're looking in the mirror and going, I am beautiful. Girl, you don't mean it. And you don't have to mean it right away, but you need to say something along the lines of, I am learning every day to feel more beautiful in my own skin. And mean that. Mean that you are working on it. Mean that you're trying. The feeling behind it is the biggest part outside of the window of time that you need to be doing it in. So I would definitely say affirmations can be so powerful when you do it at that right time. The next thing I want to say, and I'll end with EFT tapping because I think these two are really powerful, but self-talk is so important. If you are constantly talking shit about yourself, you are never going to feel confident. If you are constantly saying, I'm so stupid, I don't know how to do this, I feel dumb, I'm ugly today, or even grimacing at yourself in the mirror, we have to stop doing that, because when you do that, you're training your brain to believe those things. Because the thing is, our brain doesn't know the difference between a truth and a lie. It's just wired to be that way. So if you tell yourself a million times, I am ugly, your brain's going to be like, all right, got it. Like, we are ugly and we're not going to believe anything else. If anybody tells us that we are beautiful, I don't believe it. Like, that's all it's going to think. So what you need to start doing is, I watched this video that was like, I think it's Neville Goddard, that he talks about 7-day mental diet. And it's 7 days of just completely monitoring your self-talk. This doesn't mean that you are bad or you should shame yourself if a negative belief comes up or a negative self-talk comes up. But the whole concept is, when you think to yourself, oh, I'm stupid, immediately catch yourself. Don't allow yourself to like ruminate on that thought. Just give it a second and then move on and reframe it immediately and say, no, I'm not stupid. I'm learning. We're going to start over. And you're almost just giving yourself that mental reset. And you can even say the word reset and then just move forward from there. And the reason this is so powerful is because, as we know with like manifestation, the thoughts that we have in our minds create a reality. Our thoughts, our beliefs, the words we speak create the action that we end up taking. When you say things like, I can't do this, you can't. You will not be able to show up in the way that you want. But when you say I can, even if there's not like full belief behind it, but you say I can do this and I'm going to try, you've already given your brain like a thought saying, we're going to do this though. And then you're more likely to take action and feel better about it. I went on a retreat actually back in December, and the whole 3-day weekend, just 3 days, whenever I would say something that was slightly negative, or I would say, oh, I want this, my mindset coach would be like, I am doing this, or I have this. And I'm like, but I don't have that thing yet. Like, that doesn't really make any sense. And he's like, Maggie, we're just retraining your brain. We're retraining your subconscious to believe that you already have that thing so that you can show up in a different way. And by the end of this 3-day mastermind or retreat, I was I had already reframed my brain. I don't know how I did it. I was already every time I would speak and say, I don't know, I would say, wait, I do know, and immediately reframe myself on my own. And I teach that to my clients all the time. And I'm like, you're going to get real annoyed with me real quick, because every time you say, I can't do this, I can't do that, or I don't know, I'm going to catch you and be like, you do know. Like, take a deep breath. Me. I do.
Yeah. I was going to say, no, I'm like, before you get into EFT tapping, I wanted to say too, like, that was one thing that you taught me, was stopping my thoughts and being like changing it. So it's like, oh, I hate my style. Like, no, like, I'm learning to dress in a way that makes me feel more confident, or I'm learning to dress in a way that reflects the way I want to be. Or like, oh, my acne makes me so ugly. Like, I'm figuring out how to get rid of my acne, and acne does not like to, like, you know what I mean? Just kind of like changing, or especially like one thing is I would always be like, oh, like, I need to do this. And you would be like, I'm actively working towards this, instead of like, I need to do XYZ thing. Like, I'm working toward that. And that mindset shift was really good. But continue on into what you were saying into EFT tapping too.
Yeah. No, it's just like, self-talk is probably one of the most powerful things you can do, because so many of us are on autopilot, thinking so negatively about ourselves. So if you go the rest of your life thinking that way, nothing's ever going to change. So be kind to yourself is moral of the story. And then the final and most powerful tool that I want to share with you is EFT tapping. So what its full name is Emotional Freedom Technique. And it's basically, the best way to describe it is, it's like energetic acupuncture. So you put needles in different meridian points on the body to kind of move the chi, move the energy around, and it brings relief. When it comes to acupuncture, it's like it can bring peace, or it can bring less pain, or whatever. My mom's an acupuncturist, so I find this stuff very interesting. But when it comes to EFT, you're physically tapping on different meridian points in the body, and you're releasing, neutralizing, and removing any of the negative blockages, energy blockages that are in the body, because our body holds on to trauma. And so something that's really cool to think about too is, for a lot of people who are into personal development, you say the affirmations, you read all the books, you do all the mind work. The mind is only 20% of the work when it comes to reprogramming. The other 80% is the body. So that has to do with somatics. So you could use breath work, you could use EFT tapping, and without involving both the mind and the body, you're always going to wonder, I feel like I have so much awareness, but why can I never actually break through my limiting beliefs? You have to involve both. So a way that you can use EFT is, as you're tapping on the different points, you can start off by saying whatever you're going through. You can start saying like, oh, I'm feeling really insecure about this speaking engagement that I have to do. Or let's just say it's an entrepreneur who's about to get up on stage and she's really nervous about going up and speaking in front of everybody. So she can say, I'm really anxious about the speaking engagement. I'm really nervous. I don't feel good enough. It's okay to speak negatively while you're tapping, because you're just tapping through the limiting beliefs that you have. And then halfway through, you start shifting them to, I'm releasing this anxiety now. I'm releasing all of the fear now. I can show up as my most confident self. I know I can do this. I'm a very smart person, and just keep tapping and saying more positive affirmations. So you're kind of going in a wave of negative to releasing it to positive. And by doing that, you're just removing the energetic blockages that are there. And for those of you who have done EFT tapping, you will notice a literal feeling of relief and lightness after you do it, because you're also just calming the nervous system. Like I've told you, Grace, you can just tap without even saying anything. You're naturally just going to be calming your nervous system just by doing that, which is the easiest way to relieve any anxiety or overthinking, or if you just really feel really cluttered in the moment. What's the other thing I wanted to say about that?
And before you move on, if you're not watching the video version of this podcast, because Maggie was like physically tapping at random places on her body, not random, but random to me, because this is the first time I'm learning about this. She is tapping on different parts of her body. You could probably, what would you encourage people to like pull up a YouTube video of like how like the motions work? Or
yeah. So I would say like you can go on YouTube and find free EFT tapping videos, and they'll show you the different points. There's millions of different scripts that people have created that are free to everybody that you can use. The best way to do it is, if you want to go that route, they're going to be just more generic, which is fine. Like if you are feeling stressed about money, you can literally find an EFT tapping video directed towards money. But the pro about working with a practitioner is that you get to have a script created based around your limiting beliefs. I was just working with a client the other day, and some of her limiting beliefs were she didn't feel good enough, she didn't feel smart enough, capable enough. And I won't go into like super specifics on the circumstances, but I created a script that was based around her exact limiting beliefs, things that she has actually expressed to me that she felt insecure about. And she even said it was very uncomfortable tapping on it. Like as she's saying, I don't feel good enough, I don't feel smart enough, she's like, it's very uncomfortable. I don't want to be saying, negative things about myself. But I told her it's all like energetically moving those blockages out. You're not actually manifesting that I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. But that's the beauty in working with a practitioner, is that you can actually have scripts be created based around your specific limiting beliefs, which is even more powerful. And another thing that's really powerful is working in a community. That's something that I actually am creating in the near future, is a community where we do EFT tapping each week, and just having the energy of however many people around you, like a group of people, it just allows things to feel even more, I keep using the word powerful, but it's just such a powerful technique. You can do this on your own. You can do it with a group. It's really whatever you prefer.
I love that. I know we've talked a lot about EFT, and it's been something that I did try it once, so you'd be proud of me, but also it was really uncomfortable. And I think I want to like point this out, because I think you bring up a good point about like how it felt uncomfortable for that person. A lot of this stuff like feels uncomfortable. Like, for example, I have done affirmations every single day of 2024. I have not missed a single day. I journal, I make a list of things I'm grateful for, and then I do affirmations and I write them down and then I say them out loud before I go to bed. And when I first started doing them, I was like, this is dumb. Like, I was like, this feels so stupid. Like, I don't want to write these things down. But like, I am enough. I'm like, this just sounds like so like frou-frou and just like weird. And I was like, I don't want to do this. But then part of what I realized is I'm like, one, like, good things are on the other side of uncomfortable, like you want a healthy relationship. Well, guess what? There's going to be uncomfortable conversations you're probably going to have. Or like you want like a different physique. Well, guess what? Like going to the gym and like pushing yourself is not going to be like super comfortable. Or you want to live in a new city. Guess what? It's not going to be comfortable to like move. Like a lot of those things are uncomfortable. You have to get past that initial feeling of uncomfortability. And I will say it did get better. I think after doing it for about like maybe a week or so was when I started to be like, okay, yeah, I like this. And I mean, I've been doing it ever since, but also realized that part of the reason why it was so uncomfortable, and I'm sure it's why EFT tapping is uncomfortable, is the movements, I think, of EFT tapping is what made me feel uncomfortable. Like, I'm like, why am I tapping on my damn head and like under my eye? I'm like, this just feels crazy, Yeah, I was like, this feels crazy. But at the same time, the statements that you're saying when you're doing affirmations or EFT tapping, it felt like it felt uncomfortable to say them, but I realized it was either because it felt like I was lying or I didn't really believe it about myself. Like I'm saying things like, like I'm capable of things I set my mind to and I am enough and like whatever. And I would feel uncomfortable saying them because there was a part of me that didn't believe it to be true. So I was sitting there feeling like I'm looking myself dead in the eyes, because I used to do it in the mirror too. I'd look myself dead in the eyes and be like, I am enough. And I'm like, girl, you're lying to me. You know what I mean? Like it would feel like a lie, but that's the whole point. Like you have to keep working through that. And now when I like look back in my journal from the things that I did affirmations on in the beginning of the year, those are now things that I can confidently say. But yet when I started them, it was things I couldn't say about myself. I didn't really believe them. And of course, now I have different affirmations. I work on different things, working on different limiting beliefs. But I think that you really have to be open to getting through the uncomfortability if you really want to like move through it. And I think that's why community is really important, and just like having open conversations about these things and being around other people. Like I know you and I have gotten a lot of support from each other, like through a lot of the things that we've worked through and the limiting beliefs that we've had and whatever. And it's good to just have someone who's like in your corner. So I don't know when you're launching your community, but I highly encourage people to join, because I think having people that also want to work towards something like that, it's just, I don't know, when you're around people like that, you're like, well, you know what? I don't want to show up for myself today, but like a lot of people are waiting for me to hop on that call, so I better get there, and that just helps you push through the uncomfortable.
It's so much more inspiring, and you feel so much more motivated to actually do the things you want to do, because we self-sabotage sometimes. It's not that we don't want to do these things. It's that we don't believe that we are either capable of having them or good enough to have those things. So having community just allows us to be in a safe space where we can express ourselves, where we can, I mean, when I first started doing EFT also, I was like, this is so cringy. Like, I hate this. And for a while, I resented it and I didn't do it. But I thought to myself, I hear so many success stories. There's no way that this is it. Like, it's just not something that it's just something that I'm going to hate. So the more that I started doing it, the more I started letting my guard down and becoming more vulnerable with myself and being able to show myself that side of myself, that's when things started to just flow more. And I started actually being able to manifest more things into my life. Like I've manifested speaking engagements. I've manifested even more confidence, being able to show up online, meeting new people. It's crazy the amount of work that you can do when you finally let go of the things that are blocking you from having those. Something I wanted to say earlier that is just coming back to me now is your highest self. Like we said, it's not a separate version of you. It is you. It's really your highest self is just the version of you that has moved through her subconscious programming, because that's all it is. Like I said, when you have all this subconscious programming that you're not good enough, capable enough, smart enough, you stay stagnant in this like lower frequency state or identity, but you are your highest self. It's just moving through those blockages to actually get to that version of you that is what you need to do.
I love this so much. We are coming up on time here, so I feel like this is kind of a good segue into you letting everybody know how they can work with you or where they can find you if they want to learn more.
Yeah, of course. So my Instagram, you can follow me there. It's Maggie May with 2 E's. And you can just go, if you want to work with me, you can go into my bio. And what I have there is a waitlist to my new program. It's called Becoming Her. It's launching next month, which is super exciting. And I'm basically going to be helping you become your highest, most confident self. And like I said, also, it's going to be including a community that I'm going to be launching alongside it, where you can do, I know, it's so exciting. You can do EFT tapping each week with me and just have support from a group of women who are like-minded, who are there to see you succeed, who are there to, when you're feeling like you're doubting yourself or comparing yourself or just feeling insecure, having a group of people to support you is just the most powerful thing you can possibly do. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely give me a follow on It's Maggie May.
Love that. We will include all of your links in the show notes of this episode as well. But Maggie, thank you for coming on to the Life You Love podcast. This was such a fun episode, and we hope everyone got so many takeaways from this because this was, in my opinion, super actionable and things that people can implement immediately. So thank you again for coming onto the podcast. We hope you enjoyed talking with us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.